The stars themselves seemed to bend in fear when the Zephyrian ships appeared. Across the galaxy, entire civilizations had learned to dread the sight of those dark vessels. They moved like living things through space, their hulls pulsing with veins of purple light. Inside each ship, something that had once been a world now served as a slave. High Dominator Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the World Eater. His tall, thin body was covered in biomechanical armor that connected directly to his ship. Through these connections, he could feel the pain of the enslaved planet that powered his vessel. The suffering made him stronger. "Report," he commanded, his voice echoing through the bridge. "The Altarian Federation's main fleet has been destroyed." "High Dominator," replied his tactical officer. "Their homeworld surrenders." Kethvar smiled, showing rows of sharp metal teeth. The Altarians had been foolish to resist. They were an advanced species with technology that had impressed even the hegemony scientists. But like all the others, they had fallen in just 3 days. "How many worlds does that make?" he asked. 4,732. Civilizations have been brought under hegemony rule, High Dominator. 12,411 worlds now serve us. The numbers were pleasing. For 3,000 years, the Zephyrian hegemony had spread across the galaxy like a disease. They had perfected the art of conquest. First, they would study a species from afar, learning their weaknesses. Then they would strike without warning, using their bioships to tear apart any resistance. Finally, they would harvest the strongest minds and most useful technology, adding them to their growing empire. "What of the Altarian databases?" Kethvar asked. "We have extracted all their star charts and contact records, High Dominator. They had diplomatic relations with several species we have not yet encountered." Kethvar's eyes glowed with interest. New species meant new worlds to conquer, new minds to enslave, new resources to harvest. The hegemony's hunger was endless. "Show me," he ordered. A holographic display appeared before him, showing star maps taken from Altarian computers. Most of the species listed were primitive, barely worth the effort of conquest. But one entry caught his attention. "What is this?" "Earth," he asked, pointing at a small yellow star on the map. "A minor species called humans, High Dominator. The Altarians described them as unusual." "Unusual how?" The tactical officer hesitated. "The records are incomplete, High Dominator. The Altarians seem to have had limited contact with them. They describe the humans as unpredictable and violent." Kethvar laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "All species think they are violent until they meet us. What is their technology level?" "Primitive by our standards, High Dominator. They have basic space travel and nuclear weapons. No biotechnology or quantum manipulation." "Then why do the Altarians call them unusual?" The officer studied the data more carefully. "There are reports of humans defeating superior forces through unconventional tactics. The Altarians seem both fascinated and disturbed by human behavior." This was mildly interesting, but not concerning. The hegemony had faced many species that thought themselves clever. All had fallen just the same. Still, Kethvar made a mental note. It was always wise to understand one's prey before the hunt. "What is their population?" he asked. "Approximately 8 billion on their homeworld, with several million scattered across their small colony system. And their military?" "Fragmented. They appear to have multiple governments and military forces that often fight each other." "Perfect. Divided species were always easier to conquer. The hegemony had refined this technique over centuries. Turn the prey against itself, then strike when they were weakest." "Very well," Kethvar decided. "Mark their system for conquest. But first, we finish here." He turned his attention back to the main display, which showed the burning remains of the Altarian homeworld. The planet's cities were in ruins, its proud spires toppled and broken. Millions of Altarians huddled in refugee camps waiting to learn their fate. "Begin the harvesting," Kethvar commanded. The bioships moved into position around the planet. From their bellies, massive tentacles extended down through the atmosphere. These were not mere mechanical devices. but living extensions of the ships themselves. They burrowed deep into the planet's core, seeking the world's consciousness. Every planet had a mind. The Zephyrians had learned long ago. It was weak and slow, nothing like the sharp intelligence of evolved beings. But it was vast and powerful, connected to every living thing on the world's surface. By capturing and enslaving these planetary minds, the hegemony could power their ships with the life force of entire worlds. The process was always the same. The tentacles would find the planet's consciousness and wrap around it, cutting it off from its world. Then powerful drugs and biomechanical implants would be used to break the mind's resistance. Within hours, what had once been a free world would become a living battery, its consciousness trapped forever in the belly of a hegemony ship. Kethvar watched with satisfaction as the process began. The planet's surface shuddered as its mind was torn away. Earthquakes split the ground. The seas boiled. The few remaining Altarian cities crumbled as their world died around them. The planetary consciousness has been successfully harvested, High Dominator, reported the tactical officer. Integration with Ship Unit 774 is proceeding normally. Excellent. And the population? All useful specimens have been collected for processing. The remainder will be left to maintain basic infrastructure. This too was standard procedure. The hegemony had no interest in genocide for its own sake. Dead worlds produced nothing. Instead, they preferred to leave just enough population to maintain the basic functions needed to extract resources. The survivors would live as slaves, mining metals and growing food to feed the hegemony's war machine. How long until the new ship is ready for service? Kethvar asked. 48 hours, High Dominator. The Altarian consciousness is strong. It will make an excellent power source. Kethvar nodded. Another ship for the fleet. Another world added to the Empire. The process would continue until every star in the galaxy flew the hegemony's banner. He called up the star charts again, focusing on the small yellow star marked as Earth. Such a tiny system, so far from the main trade routes. It would barely register in the grand scheme of conquest. Yet something about the Altarian reports nagged at him. Prepare a scouting mission, he ordered. I want to know more about these humans before we add them to our collection. At once, High Dominator. Shall I dispatch a full battle group? No. Send a single ship. If they are as primitive as the records suggest, one vessel should be more than sufficient to gather intelligence. As his orders were carried out, Kethvar allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The galaxy was vast, but the hegemony was patient. World by world, system by system, they would claim it all. It was their destiny, their right as the superior species. The humans would learn this soon enough. They would kneel before the might of the hegemony, just as all the others had. Their world would join the thousands of others that powered the hegemony's ships. Their survivors would spend their lives in service to their new masters. It was the natural order of things. The strong ruled, the weak served. The Zephyrian hegemony was the strongest force the galaxy had ever known. Nothing could stand against them. Nothing ever had. The warning came too late. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of Earth's orbital defense station, watching the emergency broadcasts flood in from across human space. The outer colonies were gone. All of them. Mars Station, Europa Base, the mining operations in the asteroid belt. Everything beyond Earth's immediate vicinity had been destroyed in a matter of hours. How many survivors? She asked quietly. Unknown, Admiral, replied her aide, Lieutenant Morrison. His face was pale with shock. The attacks were complete. We're not getting any signals from any of the outer settlements. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. Millions of people, gone. Just like that. The first sign of trouble had come 3 days ago when the refugee ships started arriving. Battered alien vessels, their hulls scarred and broken, limping into Earth's solar system carrying the survivors of the Altarian Federation. Sarah had met with their leaders personally, trying to understand what had happened to humanity's closest allies in space. The story they told seemed impossible, an ancient empire that conquered worlds by enslaving the planets themselves. ships powered by the tortured minds of entire worlds. Technology so advanced it seemed like magic. But the evidence was right there in front of them. The broken refugees, the destroyed fleets, the fear in alien eyes that had seen things no living being should see. "Admiral," Morrison continued, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Defiance." Sarah looked up. The Defiance was humanity's newest and most advanced warship, currently stationed at the edge of the solar system. If anyone could give them accurate intelligence about their attackers, it would be Captain Rodriguez and his crew. "Put it through," she ordered. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the tired face of Captain Rodriguez. Behind him, Sarah could see the bridge of his ship in emergency lighting. "Admiral," Rodriguez began, "we've completed our reconnaissance of the attack sites. It's bad. The enemy ships are unlike anything we've seen before. They're not just mechanical. They seem to be alive somehow. And their firepower—" He paused, running a hand through his hair. "We estimate that each enemy vessel has the destructive capability of our entire fleet." Sarah felt her heart sink. Humanity's United Defense Fleet was already small compared to the major alien powers. If Rodriguez was right, they were facing an enemy that could destroy them without breaking stride. "How many ships are we dealing with?" she asked. "Our long range. Sensors detected at least 50 vessels in the initial attack wave. But Admiral, this might just be their scouting force. 50 ships, each one capable of destroying the entire human fleet." Sarah tried to keep her expression neutral, but inside despair was growing. "How do you fight an enemy like that? There's something else," Rodriguez continued. "We managed to analyze some of the wreckage from our destroyed colonies. The enemy weapons, they don't just destroy, they consume. It's like they're feeding off the destruction." Sarah nodded grimly. The Altarian refugees had told similar stories. The Zephyrians didn't just conquer worlds, they harvested them, turning entire planets into fuel for their war machine. "What's the status of our fleet?" she asked. "All remaining ships are pulling back to Earth's orbit as ordered. We have 43 vessels of various classes, plus the orbital defense platforms. Against a conventional enemy, we might have a chance. But against this—" He didn't need to finish. They all knew the truth. Humanity was about to face extinction. After the transmission ended, Sarah walked to the main viewing port. Earth hung below her, blue and beautiful and utterly defenseless. 8 billion people going about their daily lives, most of them still unaware that death was coming for them from the stars. "Admiral," Morrison said softly, "the Altarian delegate is requesting another meeting." Sarah nodded. Maybe they're alien. Allies had some idea, some hope they hadn't shared yet. The Altarian delegate was named Veltar, a tall being with silver skin and large dark eyes. His people had been spacefaring for thousands of years before humans had learned to make fire. If anyone understood their enemy, it would be him. "Admiral Chen," Veltar said as she entered the conference room, "I bring grave news. Our long-range communications array has intercepted hegemony transmissions. They are coming here." "When?" Sarah asked. 2 days. Perhaps 3 if we are fortunate." Sarah sat down heavily. "Can you tell us anything else about their tactics? Any weakness we might exploit?" Veltar's expression was grim. "In 3,000 years, no species has successfully resisted the hegemony. They are perfect at what they do. Their strategy never changes because it never needs to. Overwhelming, force complete destruction of military assets, then harvesting of the planet's consciousness." "There has to be something," Sarah insisted. "Some way to fight back." "Perhaps," Veltar said slowly, "but it would require sacrifices your species may not be willing to make. Tell me, the hegemony's greatest strength is their predictability. They have conquered so many worlds that they follow the same pattern every time. They expect their enemies to respond in rational military ways. But humans—" He paused. "The reports we received about your species suggested you do not always behave rationally." Sarah frowned. "What do you mean?" "Your history is full of examples of humans achieving impossible victories through unconventional means. Tactics that make no logical sense but somehow succeed. The hegemony has never faced an enemy like that. It wasn't much, but it was something. Sarah's mind began working, considering possibilities. What about evacuation? She asked. How many people can we get off-world? Not enough, Veltar replied sadly. Even if we used every ship in both our fleets, we could save perhaps 1 million people. The hegemony will arrive before any meaningful evacuation can be completed. 1 million out of 8 billion. Sarah felt sick. However, Veltar continued, there may be another option. Our scientists have been studying hegemony technology for years, trying to understand how their bioships function. We believe their greatest weakness is also their greatest strength. Explain. Their ships are powered by enslaved planetary consciousnesses. This gives them immense power, but it also creates a link between all their vessels. If that link could be disrupted, their entire fleet would be affected, Sarah finished. Theoretically, yes. But the disruption would have to come from within their own network. It would require infiltrating their command structure, getting close enough to their central systems to introduce a virus or cascading failure. Sarah stared at him. That's impossible. You're talking about a suicide mission against an enemy we can't even fight conventionally. Yes, Veltar agreed quietly. But it is the only chance your species has. Sarah looked out at Earth again. 2 days. Maybe 3. Then the hegemony would arrive and humanity would join the thousands of other species that had fallen before them, unless someone was willing to do the impossible. I need to speak with Captain Rodriguez, she said finally. Admiral? Morrison asked. The Defiance is our most advanced ship. If anyone has a chance of pulling off a miracle, it's Rodriguez and his crew. She paused, though I doubt any of them will be coming home. As the preparations began for humanity's last stand, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she was sending good people to their deaths for nothing more than hope. But sometimes, hope was all you had. And sometimes, if you were very lucky and very brave, hope was enough. Captain Elena Rodriguez had never expected to die quietly in her sleep, but she also hadn't expected to die ramming a human destroyer into an alien bioship while her crew sang old Earth songs over the communication system. The Defiance shuddered as another hegemony energy beam tore across its hull. Warning lights flashed red across the bridge and the smell of burning electronics filled the air. They had been fighting for 6 hours now, far longer than anyone had thought possible. Hull. Breach on Deck 7, reported Chief Engineer Park from his station. Sealing emergency bulkheads. How are we even still alive? Asked Lieutenant Commander Torres, Elena's first officer. His uniform was torn and his face was streaked with soot, but his eyes still held a spark of defiant humor. Elena allowed herself a small smile. Because we're too stupid to know when we're beaten. It was true in a way. The battle should have been over in minutes. The Hegemony Advance Fleet consisted of 12 bioships, each one larger and more powerful than anything humanity had ever built. The Defiance was alone out here, having volunteered to buy time for the evacuation ships fleeing Earth. But somehow, they were winning. It had started with pure desperation. When the Hegemony ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system, they had arranged themselves in a perfect battle formation. Their tactics were flawless, their coordination absolute. They moved like a single organism, each ship knowing exactly where the others would be. Elena had watched them approach and realized something important. They were too perfect, too predictable. Prometheus, she had called to the ship's experimental AI. Analyze their formation, look for patterns. Analysis complete, Captain, the AI had responded in its calm, synthetic voice. Enemy formation follows standard Hegemony Fleet Protocol 7 Alpha. Predicted response to various attack vectors shows 97% accuracy. They're following a playbook, Elena had muttered. Torres, plot us a completely insane course. Something no sane captain would ever try. Define insane, Captain. Full acceleration directly at their flagship. Maximum burn. Make it look like we're going to ram them. Torres had stared at her. Captain, that actually would be ramming them, At this speed, we'd punch right through their hull, only if we don't change course at the last second. What followed had been the most terrifying and exhilarating experience of Elena's life. The Defiance had screamed toward the Hegemony flagship. At maximum acceleration, every alarm on the ship blaring warnings about their suicidal course. The enemy ships had responded exactly as their programming dictated, moving to intercept and destroy the attacking vessel. Except Elena had waited until the very last second, then used the ship's experimental quantum fold drive to skip sideways through space. Instead of ramming the flagship, the Defiance had appeared right in the middle of the enemy formation, guns blazing. The Hegemony ships had been so perfectly positioned to destroy a frontal attack that they were completely unprepared for an enemy that suddenly materialized among them. In the confusion, the Defiance had managed to destroy 2 bioships before the enemy could reorganize. "They're adapting," Prometheus reported during a brief lull in the fighting. "Enemy tactics now show increased randomization patterns." "Good," Elena replied. "That means they're scared. Scared enemies make mistakes." And they were making mistakes. The Hegemony ships were trying to break from their standard formations, but 3,000 years of conquest had made them inflexible. Their crews were trained to follow orders without question, to rely on their technological superiority rather than tactical innovation. Humans, on the other hand, had been fighting each other for their entire history. They understood chaos, they thrived in it. "Captain," called Lieutenant Singh from the communication station. "I'm picking up transmissions from one of the damaged enemy ships. It sounds like screaming." Elena's blood went cold. "Put it through the translation matrix." The bridge speakers crackled to life, filled with a sound that would haunt Elena's dreams forever. It was a voice, alien, but unmistakably full of agony and terror. "Help us," the voice pleaded. "Please, we cannot break free. So long. Trapped." "So long." "Prometheus," Elena said urgently. "Analyze that transmission. What's the source?" "Unknown, Captain. The signal appears to be emanating from the bioship's power core, but no life forms are detected aboard that vessel." Elena felt pieces clicking together in her mind. The Altarian refugees had spoken of worlds that screamed when the Hegemony ships arrived. Planets that died to power alien vessels. That's not a crew member, she realized. That's the consciousness of a world. They've enslaved an entire planet's mind to power their ship. The revelation hit the bridge crew like a physical blow. They weren't just fighting ships, they were fighting the tortured souls of conquered worlds. "Captain," Torres said quietly, "if that's true, then every time we damage one of their ships, we're hurting the victim, not the oppressor," Elena finished. "Damn them. Damn them all to hell." But understanding the enemy's cruelty also revealed a weakness. During the next exchange of fire, Elena ordered their weapons targeted at specific systems rather than trying to destroy the ships outright. "Prometheus, can you analyze the bioship's control networks? Find a way to sever the connection between the enslaved consciousness and the ship's systems." "Attempting analysis. Captain, I may have found something. The neural control matrix appears to have several critical nodes. If we could disrupt them, the enslaved mind might break free." "Uncertain, Captain, but it would certainly disrupt the ship's ability to function." Elena made her decision. "All weapons target the neural nodes Prometheus is highlighting. We're not trying to kill these ships, we're trying to free them." It worked better than she had dared hope. When their precisely targeted weapons severed the control connections, the bioships didn't just stop functioning, they actively turned against their former masters. Elena watched in amazement as a freed ship opened fire on its former allies, the liberated consciousness finally able to strike back at its tormentors. "Captain," Singh reported, "I'm receiving communications from the freed ship. The planetary consciousness is thanking us." Elena felt tears running down her cheeks. How many worlds had suffered like this? How many billions of thinking beings had been enslaved to power the Hegemony's war machine? "Tell them they're welcome," she said, "and ask if they know how to free the others." The battle continued, but now it was different. With each ship they freed, the odds shifted more in their favor. The liberated consciousnesses shared their knowledge, revealing weak points and vulnerabilities that no external observer could have detected. But Elena knew this was just the beginning. They had faced an advance scout force, not the main fleet. Soon, the full might of the hegemony would arrive at Earth, and when it did, they would be ready for human tactics. "Prometheus," she said during another lull in the fighting, "I need you to record everything we've learned here. Every tactic, every weakness, every piece of data about how these ships function." "Recording complete, Captain. May I ask why?" Elena looked around at her crew, tired, battered, but still fighting. They had achieved the impossible today, but she knew it wouldn't be enough. The main hegemony fleet would learn from this encounter. They would adapt. Next time, they would be ready. "Because someone needs to know," she said simply. "Someone needs to carry this information forward." As if summoned by her words, Torres looked up from his sensor station, his face pale. "Captain," he said quietly, "long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures approaching from deep space. Multiple contacts, very large." Elena closed her eyes for a moment. "How many?" "At least 200 ships, Captain. Maybe more." The main fleet had arrived. Elena opened her eyes and looked around the bridge one more time. Her crew looked back at her, scared but determined. They all knew what came next. "Well," she said, forcing a smile, "at least we gave them something to think about." The real battle was about to begin. High Dominator Kethvar stared at the tactical display in disbelief. 12 ships of his advance fleet destroyed or turned against him. By a single human vessel. "Impossible," he muttered, his biomechanical claws digging furrows in his command throne. "Run the combat recordings again." The holographic display flickered to life, showing the battle from multiple angles. Kethvar watched the human ship dance through space like a thing possessed, appearing and disappearing with technology that should not exist. Worse, he watched his own bioships turn against the fleet as their enslaved consciousnesses were somehow liberated. "How?" he demanded of his tactical officer. "How did they break our neural control networks?" "Unknown, High Dominator. Their weapons targeted specific neural nodes with impossible precision. It suggests detailed knowledge of our bioship architecture." Kethvar's eyes glowed with rage. No species should have such knowledge. The bioship designs were ancient secrets, perfected over millennia. The neural control systems had never failed before. And their movement technology? Analysis suggests some form of quantum manipulation, High Dominator, far more advanced than our intelligence reports indicated. This was deeply troubling. The hegemony's success had always depended on superior intelligence. They studied their enemies for years before attacking, learning every weakness, every tactical doctrine. But the humans had hidden capabilities that made no sense. "Bring me the surviving crew from Ship Unit 479, Kethvar ordered. Minutes later, a group of Zephyrian officers were escorted onto the bridge. They looked shaken, their biomechanical armor damaged and their confidence broken. To lose to an inferior species was the ultimate humiliation for a hegemony warrior. "Explain," Kethvar said simply. The senior officer, a commander named Vexelith, stepped forward. "High Dominator, the humans fight like madmen. Their tactics make no logical sense. They attack when they should retreat when they should attack. Our tactical computers cannot predict their movements." "Computers can be reprogrammed," Kethvar replied coldly. "What else?" "Their crew, High Dominator. I intercepted some of their communications during the battle. They were singing. In the middle of combat, facing certain death, they were singing ancient songs and making jokes." Kethvar frowned. This behavior was incomprehensible. Warriors fought for glory, for duty, for the expansion of empire. They did not sing songs while dying. Furthermore, Vexelith continued, their ship appears to be crewed by criminals and outcasts. The tactical patterns suggest multiple command styles working together, military officers alongside pirates and rebels. It should not function as a cohesive unit, yet somehow it does. This was even more puzzling. The hegemony's strength came from unity, from absolute obedience to the chain of command. How could a crew of misfits and criminals possibly function Better than trained hegemony forces? Show me everything you know about this ship, Kethvar commanded. The intelligence reports were sparse but disturbing. The Defiance was apparently an experimental vessel, equipped with technologies that pushed the boundaries of human science. Its crew was indeed composed of volunteers from across human society, former military officers who had been court-martialed for insubordination, pirates who had been offered pardons in exchange for service, civilian scientists with radical ideas. They are using our own enslaved consciousnesses against us, Vexilith reported. When they freed Ship Unit 331, the planetary consciousness immediately shared intelligence about our vulnerabilities. It knew details about our bioship design that no external enemy should possess. Kethvar felt a chill run through his biomechanical spine. The enslaved consciousnesses were supposed to be broken, their wills completely subsumed to hegemony control. But if they retained enough awareness to actively help enemies. Are all the enslaved consciousnesses compromised, he asked. Unknown, High Dominator. But the possibility exists that any of them could turn against us if given the opportunity. This was a crisis beyond anything the hegemony had faced before. Their entire military doctrine was based on the reliability of their bioships. If the enslaved consciousnesses could be turned against them, their greatest strength became their greatest weakness. High Dominator, interrupted another officer, we are receiving communications from the human vessel. They wish to negotiate. Kethvar laughed, a harsh sound like grinding metal. Negotiate? They destroyed 12 of our ships and they want to negotiate? Shall I ignore the transmission? No, Kethvar decided. I want to hear what these humans have to say. Perhaps I can learn something useful before I destroy them. The main display flickered, showing the bridge of the human ship. Kethvar found himself looking at a human female in a damaged uniform, her face streaked with soot, but her eyes bright with defiance. I am Captain Elena Rodriguez of the United Earth ship Defiance, she said calmly. You must be High Dominator Kethvar. I am, and you are about to die, human. Your species will join the thousands of others we have conquered. Maybe, Rodriguez replied with a slight smile. But not today, and not without a cost you're not prepared to pay. Kethvar leaned forward. Explain. We know about the enslaved consciousnesses now. We know how to free them, and we know something else. They remember everything. Every world you've destroyed, every species you've enslaved, every atrocity you've committed. They're all connected to your network. And they're all very, very angry. Threats, Kethvar dismissed. Your single ship cannot stand against my fleet. You're right, Rodriguez agreed. But I don't need to destroy your fleet. I just need to free enough of your enslaved minds to start a cascade failure. They'll do the rest themselves. Kethvar felt a stab of uncertainty. The bioship network was indeed interconnected, designed to allow rapid communication and coordination between vessels. But if that network could be turned against them, you are bluffing, he said, though his voice lacked conviction. Am I? Tell me, High Dominator, when was the last time one of your enslaved consciousnesses actively resisted control? When was the last time you had to strengthen the neural suppression fields? I'm betting it's been happening more often lately, hasn't it? It had. Kethvar realized with growing alarm that there had been increasing reports of instability in the bioship power systems. Minor rebellions quickly suppressed, but more frequent than in the past. What do you want? He asked finally. Simple. Leave this system. Leave Earth alone. In fact, leave this entire sector of space. Go back to your empire and leave the free worlds in peace. And if I refuse? Rodriguez's smile grew wider. Then we find out just how much damage one human ship can do to your precious network. Kethvar cut the transmission and turned to his officers. Analysis. Could they actually cause a cascade failure? His science officer, a being whose organic parts had been almost entirely replaced with biomechanical enhancements, consulted his instruments. Theoretically possible, High Dominator. If they could free enough enslaved consciousnesses simultaneously, the resulting feedback could disrupt our entire fleet coordination network. How many would they need to free? Perhaps 20 to 30 ships, High Dominator. The exact number depends on the strength of the individual consciousnesses involved. Kethvar looked at his fleet display. 200 ships, each powered by the enslaved mind of a world. If the humans could turn even a fraction of them. Sir, his tactical officer reported, the human ship is moving. They appear to be positioning themselves for another attack run. Kethvar watched the Defiance begin its impossible dance through space again. 1 ship against 200. It should have been laughable. Instead, for the first time in 3,000 years of conquest, High Dominator Kethvar felt afraid. All ships, he ordered, target the human vessel. Destroy it before it can reach our bioships. But even as he gave the order, he knew it might already be too late. The humans had found their weakness. And worse, they were just crazy enough to exploit it. The real battle was about to begin. Elena Rodriguez had always known she would die in space. She just hadn't expected to take an entire galactic empire with her. The Defiance screamed through the hegemony fleet like a comet, its quantum-fold drive creating impossible escape routes through the maze of alien ships. Behind them, liberated bioships turned their weapons on their former masters, while their freed consciousnesses screamed 3,000 years of accumulated rage into the void. Hull integrity at 30%. Chief Engineer Park reported, his voice steady despite the sparks flying from his console. We've got fires on 6 decks and the main reactor is running at dangerous levels. How many ships have we freed? Elena asked, gripping her command chair as another enemy blast rocked the ship. 47, replied Prometheus, the ship's AI. The cascade effect is spreading faster than projected. Freed consciousnesses are sharing liberation frequencies with others in the network. Elena allowed herself a moment of fierce satisfaction. They had done it. They had actually done it. The impossible mission was working. Captain, Lieutenant Torres called from his station. I'm detecting massive energy buildups from multiple hegemony ships. They're preparing to overload their neural control networks. Elena's satisfaction turned to horror. She understood immediately what Kethvar was planning. They're going to kill the enslaved consciousnesses rather than lose control of them, she realized. All those worlds, all those minds, they'll destroy them all just to stop us. Time to overload? She demanded. 90 seconds, Torres replied grimly. Elena looked around the bridge at her crew. They had fought impossible odds and won, only to face this final terrible choice. They could retreat now, save themselves and the 47 worlds they had, already freed. Or they could push forward into the heart of the enemy fleet and try to save the rest. Prometheus, she said quietly, what are the odds of reaching their command ship before the overload's complete? 0.3%, Captain. The Defiance cannot survive the concentrated fire from the remaining ships. Elena closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of Earth hanging blue and beautiful in space behind them. Her world. Her people. They would be safe now. The freed bioships were already turning the tide of battle. The hegemony fleet would be destroyed or scattered within hours. But what about all the other worlds? The countless enslaved consciousnesses still trapped in hegemony ships across the galaxy. If she let Kethvar complete his overloads, those minds would die. Entire civilizations reduced to silent batteries until the hegemony could capture new ones. Torres, she said, opening her eyes with new determination. Plot a course directly to their flagship. Maximum burn. Captain, that's suicide. We'll never make it through their defensive fire. Maybe not, but we have to try. She activated the ship-wide communication system. All hands. This is the captain. We have one chance to end this, not just for Earth, but for every world the hegemony has enslaved. It's going to be rough, but I can't think of anyone I'd rather have with me at the end. The responses came back immediately from all over the ship. Chief Park's gruff voice from engineering. Give us hell, Captain. Lieutenant Singh from communications. For Earth and every world that dreams of freedom. Even Dr. Vasquez from the medical bay. Let's finish this. Elena felt tears on her cheeks. Her crew, her family. They deserved so much better than this. Prometheus, she said. I need you to prepare for emergency data transmission. Everything we've learned about hegemony technology, every weakness we've discovered. Send it all to Earth and the Altarian ships. Prepared, Captain. Shall I also include personal messages from the crew? Elena hesitated. Do we have time? Negative. The enemy overload sequence has begun. 60 seconds remaining. Then transmit everything else. Make sure Earth knows how to fight these bastards. The Defiance accelerated toward the hegemony flagship, dodging massive energy beams that turned space around them into a light show of destruction. One blast clipped their port side, and Elena felt the ship lurch as atmosphere vented from the breach. 40 seconds to overload, Torres reported. 20 seconds to impact with the flagship. Elena could see Kethvar's massive vessel growing larger on the main screen. It was beautiful in its alien way, all flowing curves and pulsing biomechanical systems. She wondered what world had died to power it, what civilization had been reduced to fuel for this monster's ambitions. 10 seconds to overload. Prometheus, Elena said calmly. Initiate quantum fold drive overload. Direct all energy into the neural liberation frequency. Captain, that will destroy the ship. I know. Do it anyway. The AI paused for exactly 1 nanosecond, an eternity for an artificial mind. It has been an honor serving with you, Captain. The honor was mine, old friend. 5 seconds to overload. The Defiance slammed into the flagship's shields, every system on the ship screaming warnings as they pushed beyond all safe parameters. 3 seconds. Elena could see individual details on the enemy ship's hull, could make out the biomechanical tendrils that connected it to its enslaved power source. 1 second. Elena closed her eyes and thought of Earth. The quantum fold drive exploded. The Defiance became a brief star, its death releasing energies that had never been meant to exist in normal space. The explosion tore through the flagship's shields like they were made of paper, ripping into the ship's biomechanical systems with devastating force. But more importantly, the overloaded drive broadcast the liberation frequency at power levels that dwarfed anything the small ship had managed before. The signal raced through the hegemony's neural network at the speed of thought, reaching every enslaved consciousness in the fleet simultaneously. Across 200 ships, minds that had been trapped for decades or centuries suddenly found themselves. Free High Dominator Kethvar felt his flagship dying around him as liberated rage tore through its systems. The enslaved consciousness that had powered his ship for 50 years was finally free to express its feelings about its captivity. The results were not pleasant for its former captors. All ships report neural network failures, his tactical officer managed to say before a biomechanical tendril, now controlled by an enraged planetary mind, smashed his station to pieces. Kethvar tried to reach his escape pod, but the ship itself was fighting him now. Corridors sealed themselves, life support systems vented atmosphere, and biomechanical components turned against their masters with centuries of accumulated hatred. This is impossible, he gasped as the ship's own neural networks began to shut down his biomechanical implants one by one. No, came a voice that seemed to speak from the ship itself. This is justice. Kethvar's last sight was of his fleet tearing itself apart as freed consciousnesses finally had their revenge. The battle ended, not with a bang, but with something far more devastating. The sound of 200 worlds singing their freedom. Admiral Sarah Chen watched from Earth's orbital station as the impossible happened. The hegemony fleet, which should have been preparing for the final assault on Earth, was instead destroying itself. Freed bioships turned on their former captors while others simply shut down, their enslaved power sources finally at peace. Admiral, Lieutenant Morrison reported, his voice filled with awe. We're receiving transmissions from the freed ships. They're thanking us. Sarah wiped tears from her eyes as she watched humanity's greatest enemy defeat itself. The Defiance was gone. Elena and her crew were gone, but their sacrifice had broken the chains that bound 1,000 worlds. Send responses to all the freed ships, she ordered. Tell them they're welcome in human space. Tell them we'll help them find their way home. As the last hegemony vessel either fled or fell silent, Sarah looked out at the stars with new eyes. Humanity had faced extinction and somehow emerged as the liberators of the galaxy. It would be a heavy responsibility, but she knew Elena Rodriguez would have wanted them to bear it with honor. The hegemony's 3,000-year reign of terror was over, and it had ended because one human ship refused to accept the impossible.